Yo, what up guys, it's Flark, and welcome to my Ret Paladin Dragonflight Season 1 rated PvP guide. That's rated Arena, rated Battlegrounds, rated Solo Shuffle. I think I actually underestimated Ret Paladin. I made predictions at the pre-patch for what's specs are going to be insane in the new expansion. I think I underrated Ret Paladin a little bit. I think it's better than I thought. It does have some crazy bursts still. It's got the utility toolkit that Ret has always had. Sack, Unbound Freedom, Sank, Bop. That's all really good. Hodge Blind is still powerful. You got some decent CC. It doesn't have the thing that made it overwhelming in Shadowlands, which was you have 7 effects tied to one ability, and that set of 7 effects could just kill somebody from 100 because it just added too much damage to a single global. Now they still have some of that. It just doesn't do 100% of somebody's health pool. Not to say that they don't have burst, it's just that health pools are a lot higher, and then the damage relative to that might be a little bit lower. So if that's the case, then people have a chance to recover. They can rebound, right? Another thing is the addition of like massive Shadow Priest power and lock and other things that Ret doesn't traditionally like most wizards in general, might make for some struggling there. But Cupid has merit because hunters, especially Marks, but even BM, BM Cupid, Marks Cupid, can run over casters. Like Hunter is known for just slaughtering Clothies because they can't use their kiting or their roots as effectively, especially against Marks, who doesn't care about roots at all. It doesn't have any pet damage. It's just crushing you with rapid fire. So Cupid could come to, while Ret Warrior, maybe it falls a little bit behind because of the spell cleaves, although it's still crazy burst pressure. Cupid could like rise up, and then Ret could just be as good as it always was. So let me not count it out entirely. And for you guys, especially Ret mains, give it a shot. Cupid Cleave, that's Ret Marksmanship Hunter. That's one of my predictions for actually a sleeper comp going into the new expansion. So, okay, let's get into it. I'm done blabbing, I promise. Okay. Gear, itemization. Go to this building, grab a set of honor gear from this guy. Then, at the beginning of the season, save up your conquest for a weapon. You need a 2-handed weapon, so you need a lot of conquest. If you get one from the vault, you are loving it because that saves you a ton of time and energy saving up that conquest and saying, I wish I could just spend this, but I can't because I gotta wait for the weapon. But yeah, so you gotta get that weapon first because it matters so much on melee classes, especially with those big brooding 2-handed weapons. And then of course you want to grab a badge. That's the most important trinket because you are a burst spec and burst specs use the burst trinket. But that's not all that you care about. You care about your stats. And for Ret, it has the same kind of feel as DK, where Mastery is an amazing output stat, but haste is really important because globals are really important because you have things like Sanctified Wrath that's blowing up every time you spend Holy Power, and you need to generate Holy Power faster and then spend it faster to get more value out of Sanctified Wrath. So you need those fast globals and that good resource gen from haste. But you need the Mastery to actually be blowing people up in the first place. So you get a split of both stats, and how you can do that is just first Mastery Ring, Haste Ring. Get a haste necklace, but then you get mastery legs, you get mastery helm, you get mastery gloves, you get a haste weapon, you get haste bracers, right? And you can see I got a little bit of everything there for both stats. And as a result, you're going to have the smoothness to actually make value out of your burst windows because, well, it's good to have haste, like that's clear. What's not stated enough, I think, is that in PvP, sometimes you only have 3 seconds to win the game. And if you're at those sluggish, like 1.5 second globals, sometimes you just have one setup global, then another setup global, and then right before that global is up and you're about to do your big whammy hit, you ran out of time. 3 seconds has passed. And they escape, or they use a wall, or they get out, they get out of your stun. They get out of the Stormbolt from Ret Warrior. They get out of the Binding Shot from Hunter, because that's a stun now. And of course, you put your Hodge on the healer. And all of a sudden, they wall, or they port, or they gateway, or they lock port, or they blink, and you just do not have the time. So haste, for that reason, is good, but mastery is so clearly good because it has all of your damage being modified from that. I mean, all of your most important damage is holy damage only, like Frost DK or the magic damage melees like Frost and Ret, you really don't have anything that's physical. You just do nukes with holy damage or frost damage respectively. So, okay, right. And again, if you don't like how low your hits feel, you can easily take one of these pieces of jewelry, swap that over to mastery, and then that's 400 more mastery when it's scaled up, just to make you have maybe swing it a bit toward mastery. It's really how the season is feeling for you. Crit, as a side note, is just not great because it's an output stat, but it's worse than mastery, and it doesn't do any of the things that haste does, so you wouldn't run it. And verse, you're getting from every single piece, so you're good. Okay. There's your gear. Remember that badge. Now we go into talents. Talents for Ret, I feel, are kind of easy to pick. You have some iconically powerful talents, and then you have consecration package. And the consecration package as a whole is trash in PvP because people don't stand in one tiny circle on the ground. Now you could set up goes with it, like you pull people in and then stun them in it. But this isn't spear we're talking about or chill streak we're talking about. It's consecration. It ticks for like 400, right? Even with all the modifiers, setting up a consecration go just that makes me puke in my mouth just trying to even say those words. Setting up a consecration go. That just does not exist, right? And I have to be diligent here. I mean, I would look very foolish in 3 months when everybody was playing Consecration Paladin, but I refuse to be like, oh, well, maybe it'll be a thing because that's just bad. That's just irresponsible for me. If I happen to be wrong, then great. I'll eat my words. This will look like a hilarious video, but until then, I'm going to make a strong prediction here and say that the Consecration build really bad. There's so many talents for it that just do nothing in PvP environment. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, what is good for Ret Paladin? Well, really burst-centric abilities. Those are very good, like Divine Toll, which makes you fire off some judgments, AoE. This is great for cleave, but it also makes that judgment deal 100% more damage, as well as the other modifiers for judgment that you have earlier in the talents. So that's awesome. And then it also has huge synergy with Lawbringer, which we'll talk about soon. And then you cast more judgments, which has more synergy with Lawbringer after you press this. So that's just a ton of raw output. And those judgments buff your holy power spenders, because that's what judgment does. So then you get even more value from Divine Toll. So that's a great capstone. Then those judgments even give you the Vanquisher's Hammer effect. Now, you still have this effect, but it can only apply every 30 seconds, so like having the extra judgments don't really matter. Remember, you had 2 charges of Vanquishers and smaller health pools. That's why that was so terrifying in Shadowlands. But you're not going to say no to a free Divine Storm with a buff, even if it's only every 30 seconds for just 1 talent point, so grab that. Then you have Virtuous, which was a conduit from Shadowlands, and it makes you do more damage. Congratulations. Final Reckoning is nerfed in PvP, but anytime you can do a sizable amount of damage and set up a 20% buff for your most impactful abilities is still a good time. If it was the 50% that it is in PvE, well, that would be insane, and we would be talking about probably the overwhelming pressure of Cupid just being the best comp in the game. But 20% in PvP, a probably rightful nerf. It's still really, really good. There's Seraphim from Art of War. Art of War is just a proc that you can get to reset Blade of Justice, but then that even gives you proc Seraphim, which increases all your secondary stats, which makes you do more damage. And doing more damage is good, man. Okay, here's some haste. You can generate some haste from spending Holy Power. Here's a Judgment modifier. We're making it AoE, and you have a ton of AoE burst as Ret, so having more cleave pressure just helps get defensives out of people you're not even touching. There's a Judgment modifier. There's another free Divine Storm. There's a cooldown of Judgment, and then these are the most iconic abilities that you just kind of have to have. You got Divine Storm, which is your AoE. You've got the Art of War proc, which we have to run because we're running something that procs from that proc, so that would be foolish. Shield of Vengeance is really awesome because it does damage as well as being an absorb shield. You have a different answer now, a 20% wall, which could be just decent if the damage is so high during a certain window that it just instantly shreds your Shield of Vengeance off. So if output is too high for Shield of Vengeance in this meta, always take a look at Divine Protection, because that could be definitely an answer to that, because this has no cap. You know what I mean? This has a cap. Once the 70,000 damage is done, it's done. But if this reduces the damage taken by 100,000, that's awesome because it has no cap. It would just have to be a lot of damage during that 8 seconds. And we've seen some expansions recently where people were doing a lot of damage in 8 seconds. So Divine Protection could be very good, but I'm leaning towards Shield of Vengeance right now. Wake of Ashes is just an AoE ability that nukes, and of course you're going to pick it. Wings. Regular Wings gives you the crit chance. You can have the modifier build up from Crusade. And I think this is probably going to get experimented a lot with over the course of this expansion. But it just so happens that in a PvP environment, generally on-demand pressure is better than ramp-up pressure, unless that ramp-up pressure just becomes obscene at the end of the ramp-up. So that's what Crusade has to be playable, so keep a watch out for that. But right now we're going to start with Avenging Wrath, Might. There's a big 70% slow. Red is a wheelchair class, so you want a big 70% slow. Healing Hands is your big WOG heals, which you'll need to self-sustain yourself. Justicar's Vengeance is hilarious because it kind of can just replace Templar's Verdict, and it effectively does the exact same thing. It does damage for 3 holy power, but it also heals you based on the damage done, and it gets a modifier and a stun. So if you Stormbolt or Hodge kill target, and you get an off CC on the healer so the Hodge can't be dispelled, your Justicar's is going to top you while destroying them. What an interesting talent. That said, you queue into melee cleaves, you can switch right back over to Templars and instead run eye for an eye, which is only a 1-minute cooldown with a 35% damage reduction. That has a reflect mechanic. So against melee cleaves, this can effectively be a hard answer, but they have to have all physical damage. This can't be melee cleave like TSG, where the Frosty K is not doing any physical damage at all. It's got to be melee cleaves like Windwalker Warrior or Kitty Cleave that have more physical damage effects, right? So make a look for that. Remember, the coolest thing about these new talent trees is that you can switch what you're doing based on the comp that you play against. All of this is modifiable in a arena at the starting lobby, and we didn't even have to grind Torghast to get it. Cool. And yeah, then you have this Blade of Justice package, which just gives you a little bit more sustain, but really what it gives you is holy power generators, and of course the faster procs for Ashes to Ashes to give you that Seraphim buff, which is so powerful because look at that, 13% mastery and then 4% to your other great secondary stats, and you get a lot of extra output every time that procs. Okay. There's the right side of the talents. Left side of the talents, you've got some really impactful things in this square down here, and I just want to go over that first. Avenging Wrath gives you 8% mastery. There's another modifier that gives it more burst. This is why I underestimated. I just didn't see all the modifiers that you were getting, so while, yeah, health pools are really high, red damage is still going to be really high, so we'll see exactly what they play. Again, my bet is on Cupid, but there's a mastery modifier during wings. Here's Sanctified Wrath. I already talked about it. It just combines with your wings, so when you press wings, you blow yourself up with Holy Light, doing damage every time you get spenders, and with all the haste that you have in your gear, and even more from Seal Alacrity that just gives you 4% more haste, you can start firing off that Holy Power spenders and generators and spenders and generators and spenderators and just blowing people up. More holy damage is a good thing. That's from Seal of the Crusader. More Avenging Wrath duration is a good thing. That's all your burst. So that's from Zealot's Paragon. More holy damage is a good thing. Crusader Strike dealing 10% more damage. I could probably drop this. This is what you would probably drop, but you have to fit in. Now I'm gonna show you what you would fit in. This is, you drop this because it doesn't do that much overall, and you would grab some of the utility stuff. So you can get Divine Steed and Cleanse Toxins, for example, and then you could fill out the rest of this. Now, I made this left side when I was leveling, so just any form of extra damage was better than the one time I would ever have to cleanse a poison for myself in PvE, but I kept it in for the beginning of the video because I wanted to show you how you kind of have 2 free talents. And if you fill in, you could either do Cleanse Toxins and this big Steed. You could even do a little bit of extra, do not run the Consecration stuff. A little bit of extra healing from Judgment of Light, or faster Word of Glories, faster Wogs for more self-healing, right? And then once you put those 2 talents in, you can once again fill out the talent row. It's not like you were like, oh wait, it took everything out, so you actually had to get Crusader Strike damage to get the rest of the stuff. No, it actually just gives you 2 free talents and allows you to apply them to any of these. Oh, look at that, Turn Evil. That could be used on Tyrant. Of course, we learned that from Shadowlands, where you have this CC effect. Now, Tyrant had a conduit back in then, right? They had a conduit that made it a near instant cast. So getting a Turn Evil off against a Tyrant now might be very difficult. but also demo locks do insane amount of damage, so maybe it's something you have to work with. Either way, here's Blessing of Protection, right? That's a 60-second reduction. What you can effectively get is any 2 of the utility options. And the reason I wanted to talk about it this way is because look at Cleanse Toxins. What does that say? Poison and disease effects. That's not just like a dispel, right? It's not everything. So if you queued into rogues with poisons or DKs with diseases, this is a pick. But it's not an auto pick, because what if you queued into Mage, Lock, or a Mage, Ellie Shaman? What diseases do mages have? Okay, what poisons do Ellie Shamans have, right? Not a lot. In fact, 0. To my knowledge, I don't think either of those specs have any poisons at all. So this is not the type of thing, you see it and it's like this iconic ability. You see, oh, Cleanse Toxins. Paladin has always have that. I gotta choose it. But it's not like that. It's actually something you would absolutely switch to when you see poisons and diseases and switch off when you don't. So that's why I kept that. Anyway, that's the sort of thing you're doing. Let me reset the whole thing. Okay, cool. That's the sort of thing you're doing for your utility options. You gotta watch your favorite Ret streamer, Vanguard, Savix. You gotta take a look at this video and take a look at the talents for yourself and say, okay, I'm not going to just look at a guide, copy paste, and say this is done, because there are things that those guys do. They switch their talents based on the comp they're playing, the comp they're queuing into. That's the information I want to give to you guys. You got to look at these talents and see, wait a minute, this isn't always generally applicable. Cool. Now that that rant is over from this nerd that plays too much WoW, we've got all the damage modifiers at the bottom. And you got Sack, which is fantastic utility. You can use it as a wall from your teammate, and you can use it to break CC effects on you, because when you take damage, it breaks polys or fears or hexes. It's really cool. So you can pre-sack a poly, or you can use a big wall on your teammate because you take some of the damage that they're taking, and against like Rogue Mage that isn't cleaving you, that's very valuable. Okay, now you get a shorter cooldown on your wall. You get your wings. You gotta get wings, so that's a good one. Blessing of Protection, that's just a massive physical immunity that lasts forever. It can be spell stolen, of course, and purged, but you can bop people who have kidneys. You can bop all their bleeds off. You can bop all their Assassin Rogue bleeds off, or their Feral Rogue bleeds off. People who know how to use bop well are generally happy people. Steed and Double Charge. That's how you get from a wheelchair class to slightly less of a wheelchair class. And then you add Unbound Freedom to that. Now you're actually feeling like you can move sometimes. Pretty cool. Devotion Aura, that's a wall. Little damage reduction for everybody. Lay on Hands can actually be used in Arena now, so that's a massive heal as long as they're not on Forbearance from your own bubble or bop. Anybody on Forbearance, can't use it. Hammer of Wrath, that's a rotational ability. Blessing of Freedom, that's a rotational ability. Fast Hodge, there's the Judgment, makes your Holy Power do more damage. Of course, you need your Kick. And we already talked about the utility options there. And that, my friends, is the Ret talent tree. So all we have to do is take a look at the Ret PvP talents. Now, right now, unfortunately, I zugged. And I put on all the 3 offensive PvP talents. So if you want to zug like me, you can put on Lawbringer, Aura of Reckoning, and Vengeance Aura. Lawbringer is a judgment modifier that every time you fire off those judgments, everybody else who has the Lawbringer effect takes a ton of damage. And since you have all those extra judgments from Divine Toll and the Judgment Cleave effect and the fast cooldown on it, this actually ends up being a massive chunk of your damage. Aura of Reckoning is proc wings, and procking your main offensive cooldown is good. And Vengeance Aura is just crit modifiers, which is great because critting with big nuke abilities makes them hit significantly harder. But unfortunately, if you're going to swap one of those off, I think it's got to be Vengeance Aura, because you should be running Blessing of Sanctuary, which is just a CC immunity, and a removal for Stun, Silence, Fear, and Horrify, which are a big lot of the CC effects. I mean, you can't get them out of literally everything, but you can get them out of a lot, especially considering it's only a 45-second cooldown. This requires you to be cross-CC'd in every single CC chain, and if you ever get them out, like let's say, they're getting stunned into a trap, but you sank the stun, now there's no trap, which means you effectively immune to the trap by sanking the stun, which stopped 2 CC effects on a 45-second cooldown. Incredible how valuable that is. Oh, and I did talk about Unbound. So if you are queuing into Frost Mage or anything else with spam roots, but most likely Frost Mages, where you literally couldn't play any of the game, you have to run Unbound Freedom because it allows you to have Unbound Freedom, but also your teammate to have a freedom whenever you use it, and it increases your movement speed, and it makes it undispellable on you, which is exactly what a mage is going to be looking to do when you press Freedom. So I had the Zug talent, so you could see out a Zug, but of course you can drop Lawbringer, which really hurts if you need Unbound Freedom to connect. So anything with spam roots or spell steal, all mage specs, and then you pretty much have to drop Vengeance Aura for Blessing of Sanctuary unless you're RBGing, where you want to Zug as hard as possible, or you just don't care about getting your healer out of CC on solo shuffle and you're just going to try and win the game instantly by doing more damage than they do. And that is when you run the Zug talents. But Aura of Reckoning is an auto pick. This is proc wings. It's auto pick. And if you don't need your Unbound, you can still run Lawbringer, and I swear, try it. It'll do like a significant portion of your damage. And that's it. That's it. That's everything that I can think to talk about in Ret Paladin. It is better than I expected, but I'm not sure how much of a staple of the meta it'll be. So why don't you guys, and Saviks and Vanguards, all show me. I would like to play Vanguard's Cleave. That's DK Red, if you didn't know. It would be pretty fun. So get out there, start dominating, and have a wonderful, wonderful season.